All right, another subject, Iraq. Bad news today. Apparently Mr. Butler left. What can you tell us about where that thing stands in terms of whether the inspectors are going to be allowed to do what they want to do, et cetera?
They seem to want to wait until early March to open the...
Iraq does.
Iraq, yeah. that open the sites that Mr. Butler believes that ought to be open. That's a problem for us because we believe that we have to do everything we can, as quickly as we can, to check for chemical and biological weapons stocks. And as I told the American people the last time we had to stand off with Saddam before he relented and let the inspectors go back, you know, my concern is not to refight the Gulf War. My concern is to prepare our people for a new century, not only in positive ways, like creating a big international financial framework that works for them, as we just talked about, but also to make sure we have the tools to protect ourselves against chemical and biological weapons. So I won't tonight, I can't rule out or in any options, but I can tell you I'm very concerned about this, and I don't think the American people should lose sight of the issue. What's the issue? Weapons of mass destruction. What's the answer? The UN inspectors. What's the problem? Saddam Hussein can't say who, where, or when about these inspection teams. That has to be done by the professionals. And sooner or later, something's going to give here. And I'm just very much hoping that we can reason with him before that happens. But we've got to have those sites open.
Now, Ambassador Richardson at the UN and others in the administration have said the military option, just to continue your sentence, the military option remains on the table. The ambassador from Iraq to the UN was on our program recently, and he pretty much acknowledged that Iraq is banking on that not being real, that the U.S. alone is not going to go in there and take out, you know, some suspected anthrax facility, particularly if it's in the palace where Saddam Hussein lives, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the United States does not relish moving alone because we live in a world that is increasingly interdependent. We'd like to be partners with other people. But sometimes we have to be prepared to move alone. You use the anthrax example. Think how many people can be killed by just a tiny bit of anthrax. And think about how it's not just a question of whether Saddam Hussein might put them on a Scud missile, an anthrax head, and send it to some city of people he wanted to destroy. Think about all the terrorists and drug runners and other bad actors that could just parade through Baghdad to pick up their stores if we don't take the strongest possible action. I far prefer the United Nations. I far prefer the inspectors. I have been far from trigger happy on this thing. But if they really believe that there are no circumstances under which we would act alone, they are sadly mistaken. And that is not a threat. I have shown that I do not relish this sort of thing. Every time it's discussed around here, I said, you know, one of the great luxuries of being the world's only superpower for a while, and it won't last forever probably, but for a while, is that there is always time enough to kill. And therefore we have a moral responsibility to show restraint and to seek partnerships and alliances. And I've done that. But I don't want to have to explain to my grandchildren why we took a powder on what we think is a very serious biological and chemical weapons program, potentially by a country that has already used chemical weapons on the Iranians and on the Kurds, their own people.
So you would order an airstrike or whatever it would take to take out some facility if you couldn't get rid of it any other way?
Well, I'm going to stay with my tried and true formulation. I'm not ruling out or in any option. I was responding to what you said, that the Iraqi official thought we were just talking because we wouldn't want to discomfort anyone or make them mad. That's not true. This is a serious thing with me. This is a very serious thing. And you imagine the capacity of these tiny amounts of biological agents to cause great harm. It's something we need to get after. And I don't understand why they're not for getting after it. What can they possibly get out of this? He really cared about his people. He's always talking about how bad his people have been hurt by these sanctions. If he really cared about his people, he'd open all these sites, let everybody go in and look at them. If
get it behind him.
If he's telling the truth, there's nothing there, and if he's not, he'd get it behind it one way or the other. And we could then he could say, okay, what grounds does the United States have now for stopping the UN from lifting the sanctions? I have done everything I've been asked to do. And that'd be a hard question for us, even though we've got reservations about it. We'd have a hard time answering that question.
But would you go along with lifting the sanctions?
Right now, well, our position is if he complies with all the United Nations sanctions, the conditions of all UN resolutions leading to sanctions, that's what we want Iraq to do. But what he wants is he wants to have it both ways. He wants to get the sanctions lifted because he thinks people want to do business with him, and he wants to be able to continue to pursue a weapons program that we think presents a danger to the region and maybe to the world and certainly to our own interest and values. So I just want them to think about it again before they wait all this 2 months. I think that's a mistake. I want them to think about it and let these inspectors go back.